Hello Orchid friends, how are you? Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time watching my video, my channel is all about orchids. From what orchids I have, how I grow them, my thoughts on certain orchid topics, to what orchids in my collection are blooming, etc. So if you want to follow along my orchid hobby adventure, please consider subscribing to my channel and turn on the notification. Today in this video, I'm going to share with you this very fragrant Phalaenopsis orchid. This one is fragrant, but it's probably still a complex hybrid. It's a cross between Super Pixie and Caribbean Sunset, and its name is Sogo Perfume Sweet. And indeed, its fragrance is super strong and super sweet. And later in the video, I will tell you exactly what it smells like to me in my environment. When I purchased this orchid, it came with 2 flower spikes with some flowers on it, but it was toward the end of it. So pretty soon, I think 2 weeks after I took a video of the orchid, then the flowers started to drop really quickly. But this year, this time around, it's giving me 2 flower spikes as well, which is super great news. I was super excited when I saw 2 flower spikes emerging around the late fall, winter time of 2018. I was super excited. So I think with good care, this orchid would have the tendency to have 2 spikes shooting out each time. Because last time it was 2 spikes, this time it's also a 2 spike scenario. This orchid is one of the many orchids that I have in semi-hydroponics method, and the ratio that I use for the media, I think this one is, I want to say 1 to 2, so 1 manto clay to 2 hydrocorn ratio. Some of my orchids use 1 to 1, some of them 2 to 1, but it's similar to this ratio. And semi-hydro, the beauty of it is, as you can see here, that below the hole there is a reservoir area, and I do use an outer cup, so some of the roots in like light green or white colors, those roots are new roots that have grown into the media after this orchid was put into this particular growing method, because the outer cup, the blue outer cup, blocked out the sunlight, so the new roots don't have direct contact with the sunlight to produce chlorophyll. This orchid really loves semi-hydro. I remember this orchid started to produce new roots within the first week of being potted into this cup, this container, which was totally amazing. I was super amazed by how quickly this orchid adapted to this method. It might have had something to do with the timing that I repotted this orchid, but it could also be because this orchid just really loved the kind of high moisture that this method provides. And as the flowers started to open, it took this orchid about a week before I could detect any fragrance coming out of the flowers. And when it was in full bloom in the morning, the fragrance was super strong. Especially if I have my window open just slightly, that there is some airflow going in and out, I could smell the fragrance from about 5 or 6 feet away from this orchid, which is quite amazing. That just shows you how fragrant this orchid is. It's really amazing. And if you take a closer look at the flower, you will probably notice that the petals have a little bit of purplish color to it, and it's very similar color to the color of the lip. And I find that very fascinating because, the overall flower is in yellow, and then you have that extra bit of pinkish purple color on the petal. So in a way, they almost look like eyeshadows of the flower. And the lip itself, even though right now it looks like it's purplish pink, but when the sun indirect sunlight hits the flower, it actually looks more pink than the purplish pink color that you see in the video. So the lip is more on the pink side, but then the petals are with that just a little tiny bit more of the purple shade to it. This orchid typically gets watered about a week or so in summertime, and then in wintertime this orchid usually gets water anywhere between 10 to 14 days. Most other orchids can go for almost 2 weeks, but this orchid, because it has more root system in the media, so the water does get sucked up more rapidly and quickly. So usually by the 10th day, the 11th day, I can only see very little moisture within the container. And this is where I think as an orchid grower, I think everybody needs to know, or should already know, is that depending on the orchid and the root system, the same kind of method, the same water amount, right, will obviously depend on how quickly this orchid intake the water. And for this one, for example, like I said earlier, usually the 11th day, 10th day, you can only see very little moisture, if at all. But this is not to say that I water this orchid every 10 or 11 days in winter time. I still usually wait until about 14 days when I water my other orchids in the winter time, because that way at least I know when I water for sure this orchid would need water, right? That wet dry cycle, that distinctive wet dry cycle is what I like to give to all my orchids. And because it's winter time, so it's not as urgent to give this orchid water as if it were in summertime, where water dries up in a week or so, right? And you don't want to wait too long in summertime to do that, because otherwise you may end up with an orchid with droopy, very lethargic looking leaves because of dehydration. And this orchid does receive fertilizer once a week for probably 3 or 4 weeks in a row, and then I would make sure the following watering session is just pure water, because I want to make sure that I dissolve any salt deposit from the fertilizer, and just just to provide the overall root system and the media a way to be soaking clean water to dissolve anything that really needs to be flushed away. And I find that really helpful for my semi-hydro orchid. Once a month, you don't have to do it too often, once a month, just use clean water to soak it, and the water level can be almost to the top or to the edge of the cup. But otherwise, if I am feeling lazy and I only want to add water with fertilizer, and I would just add fertilized water into the reservoir up to the point where the water is just holding without outflowing from the drainage hole. So essentially the water level is just up to the drainage hole level, and that's what I would add. That's what I would do when I'm feeling lazy. But when I'm flushing or soaking the orchid, I make sure the water level is much higher. And this double cup method, even though the blue cup really is to prevent algae formation by blocking out sunlight, this cup also allows me to allow this orchid to be soaked in this cup. So this double cup method has worked really well for me in terms of, it's a multi-purpose method, and I'm really happy with how it's providing convenience in my orchid growing. So my overall assessment of this orchid's performance this year is exceeding expectation, because I did not expect this orchid to come back with 2 flower spikes, and did not expect this orchid to immediately take off with root production within a week after being potted into this container that you've seen. And the root system, oh my gosh, it's just rather extensive and healthy looking. And thankfully I use a transparent cup, so I can exactly see how the roots are doing. So overall, I think this is a really good success story, and I'm very happy to be able to share this with you on this channel, on this platform. This is all I have for you today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to get more orchid related videos from my channel, please subscribe and turn on the notification. I want to wish you happy growing, and I will talk to you in my next video. Ciao!